Adrian, would you come forward, please? I'll pray for you. Lord, I thank you for Adrian. Thank you for his gifts and his talents and his calling to serve you and to lead the people of God in this area. Lord, we pray now that you'd fill him afresh with your spirit, that you might use him to build the church here, to bring us your encouragement and your challenge, to open to us, Lord, your word. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joy to be with you this morning, and happy birthday to 130 years. I won't ask who was around 130 years ago, but actually there's so much has changed in 130 years. You know, Victoria was still on the throne, wasn't she? And when we just think about, even in transport terms, how things have changed, you know, over that time. And we've had 2 world wars. But the witness of God's people has remained here. And as over the generations, that good news of Jesus is being passed on from generation to generation. And it's now, as it were, for here in your hands to pass on to the next generation, that the light of Christ may shine brightly here in Malvern. And that's part of my prayer for you. I want to bring the greetings of the Heart of England Baptist Association. We cover the West Midlands area, and there's 156 churches. So from Staffordshire in the north down to Herefordshire in the south, the Welsh border, and then over to Rugby in the east. So there's 156 churches, and we seek to support all that God wants to do in and through the churches. And each day we seek to pray for 5 churches, and it's on a rotation basis, and Malvern will be coming up this week. So we will be remembering Malvern during the week. So this morning I want us to focus a little bit upon Colossians chapter 3, and I've entitled it, What's in the Wardrobe? But just before we get to that, it's been quite a last 3 years that we've had, hasn't it? Who would have imagined all that would have happened in such a short space of time, and the impact of the virus of COVID that's had? The COVID has changed the landscape within our own country. A recent World Health Authority report estimated that the true death toll is probably around 15 million people. That's a huge number that have been affected, and we think about all the families connected. There have been challenges with health, with finance, with communications, but hey, we've learned some new skills. We've got some of the technology around today, and who had heard of Zoom 3 years ago? You know, that's a whole new way of communicating, which has its blessings. Maybe it's got some of its downsides as well, but we can connect in with people that we didn't know. But COVID has affected every family in every nation across the globe. Governments, workplaces, world organizations are different today as a result of COVID. But I think there's been, as a result of that, there's been a bit of a weariness, bit of an exhaustion that's come out of that. And then on top of that, we've got the demands of life. Living in our society, I think, is anything but simple. We talk about bringing in technology to make things simple, but actually, I think we live in quite a complicated world and society today. We're bombarded with loads of adverts telling us what we need, what we should do, trying to influence us. There are many opinions around. And then there's that whole thing of political correctness. And I don't know if you feel a little bit like me. Sometimes I feel like I'm walking on eggshells and you're not quite sure what you should be saying today or the terminology you should be using, because the terminology is changing so fast as well. The oughts and the shoulds, the peer pressures, the many responsibilities that we're told we need to have. And sometimes you feel like you're on this roundabout that's spinning round, you want to say, let's just hold it, and I want to just get off for a moment. And then you come into church. And what do you find within the church? There's all that governance stuff that once upon a time we wouldn't have thought about, really. But the financial controls, the safeguarding, the data protection, the food hygiene, the health and safety. Charity Commissioner has its eyes upon us. And yes, right and necessary, we may say, for good living. But just reading out that list is a bit exhausting. And my friends, that's not what we're about in church, but we need those things in place. Colossians 3:12 to 17 is going to be our focus today. But the reading started with a therefore. Therefore, it says in verse 12. So when there's a therefore, it's referring to something that's already been said. So what has Paul said? Well, let me take you back to the beginning of chapter 3. And there's 4 verses which I will read at the beginning of chapter 3. Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts and minds on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Paul saying that those of us who have committed our way to God, our thoughts and our feelings ought to be centered around him. We identify with Christ in his death and in his resurrection, which means not only heaven to come, but we can experience something of that life in the here and the now. But we do need to keep that upward focus. And within the world that we live, I think for God's people, even more so, we've got to keep an upward focus. Set your hearts on things above. Set your minds on things above. Our thinking as well as our being. And then once we've sorted out our focus, we can concentrate a little bit on living as God would have us to live. Wearing the right clothes for the right occasions is important, and there's a picture here of about 18 months ago. That's my oldest son in the middle there. He got married to Kirsty up in Scotland, to Aberdeen. He's an air traffic controller up there, and they've met, and Kirsty's just been appointed associate pastor of the Baptist church that they go to there. But we dressed up for the occasion. Because you do, don't you, when you go to a wedding? You don't turn up in your old scruffs. It's right. But when we went for a walk along the cliffs, along that east coast, we didn't wear the same clothes. We dressed with proper shoes, and our gear was different, because you need the right clothes. I threw in this other picture because I came across it the other day when I was going through some old photos, and it's over 20 years old. We have 4 children, there's only 3 there, so but they had a medieval pageant at the school where I was chair of governors, so you had to dress up. So you can see how much the children are thrilled. Not by that particular day. But clothes are important. But actually other clothes, not just physical garments, are probably more important as well. And it's that where I want to take us in our thinking. But just before we get there, I hope a little bit like you, when I read the scriptures, I expect God to speak to me. And at times, you go back to a passage that you've read many times over, but sometimes it just jumps out at you and sort of slaps you around the face and says, just take notice of this. And I was reading through not long ago through some of the Old Testament minor prophets, and in Zechariah, it said, they will say, please let us walk with you, for we have heard that God is with you. I was hugely challenged by that. Here it was a group of people who were saying to the children of Israel, we've heard that God's with you, and as a result of that, we want to walk with you. And I'm thinking, what have people heard about me? Have they heard that God's with me? And then I turned it slightly and said, what have others seen in me? And as a result, do they want to walk with God because of what they see in me? Let's reflect on that a little bit as we go through this morning. I think in coming out of COVID, as I said, the church has changed. There's lots of things that have changed for each one of us. And church is a different place. You know, maybe some people aren't here that used to be here. Others don't feel able to do what they used to do. And lots of things. And my encouragement has been, don't always focus so much on what you do, but on who you are. Not always focus on what you do, but on who you are. And that's my focus as we come this morning of what is in your wardrobe. Now, I don't want to be rude about what you're wearing or not, but it's a good job that we're all different, aren't we? And our wardrobes are going to be different with the clothes that we wear. And maybe it reflects a little bit of our character. But when we're walking with God, God is the one that clothes us. And actually there is one wardrobe that God has. And there should be something that is similar regarding those inner clothes that we wear. So we read here in Colossians 3 and 12, as God's chosen people, God's chosen each one of us, and He's put His Holy Spirit within us. We are holy and dearly loved. Clothe yourself with. Well, it's those 8 things that I want us to briefly go through this morning. So the first one is clothe yourself with, and the NIV has got compassion. I think that was the one that was read earlier. But I'm using the word tender-hearted mercy because that's the New Living Translation. And I quite like the terminology in the phrase that comes with that. There's a heart connection here. There's putting oneself in another's shoes. There's walking together as one. Probably one of the most poignant examples is when Jesus showed compassion at the grave of Lazarus. When Jesus saw Lazarus's friends and family, they were weeping. What did he do? He wept with them. And it said, Jesus once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. Over and over again, we find that Jesus had compassion on the people. He was deeply moved. He healed some. He walked with others. He listened to others. He had compassion on them. He comforted them. We live in a world today where we know what's happening the other side of the world the moment it's happening. It's on our television screens. And we see so much need out there. We just think of the wars that there are around the world. I was grateful too in the prayers picking up on the persecuted church. It's something that's very dear to our hearts, and we've been out to some places where it's difficult to be a Christian. And just thinking of what they're going through. Then we walk down our own high street And we see so much need. We hear today, particularly the challenges of living in today's society and the food banks, so haven't got enough food. I was talking to some people that are just running the Black Country Food Bank where I live. I live up in Stourbridge. And the demand has been so much. And I find it so easy to almost have what I call compassion fatigue. There's so much need and you're thinking, what can I do? And as a result, I just switch off from it all. My friends, let's keep a soft heart and a tender heart and feel for other people. We can't help everyone, but we can help some. And we should help some. And we should walk alongside others. And we should have compassion. We should have that tender-hearted mercy. So in 2023, let's make sure we clothe ourselves with tender-hearted mercy. The second one, clothe yourself with kindness. Kindness. I smile that they started having act of kindness days, as though on this one day in the year, out of 365, you can be kind today. Actually, I think Jesus wants us to be kind every day, not just on one day in the year. And kindness is defined as a quality of being friendly, generous, and considerate. Being kind is intentional. We go out of our way to be kind. It's a deliberate act towards others. For many years, I've had a little rule of life that I tried to live by, and it's live a life of grace and generosity. And I try to ask myself that whatever I'm doing, am I living a life of grace and generosity? Grace is undeserved, and I have received the grace of God in Christ. God has poured himself out for me. I haven't deserved it. Quite the opposite. I've sinned. I've let God down, but he has been gracious to me. And he has been generous to me. More than generous in going the extra mile. God in Christ has been generous to me, and I need to pass that on to others. How can I be intentionally kind to others? Whether they deserve it or not is irrelevant. We just seek to show the kindness of God in our lives. So tender-hearted mercy, kindness. And the third one here is humility. Humility. It's not thinking that you are better than other people. And when I think of humility, I always turn to that passage in Philippians 2. Beautiful passage, song, poem, whatever it was in the early church there, Philippians 2 and verse 5. Jesus, being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on the cross. And it continues. Our world speaks of boasting, of pride, of promoting oneself. But my friends, pride will always divide. Pride will always cause chaos, whereas humility draws communities together. May humility be one of those qualities that marks us out. And let's clothe ourselves in 2023 with humility. The fourth one here is gentleness. And it's another great word, and contrary to what I think many think, it's a word of great strength and a quality of great strength. See, what's the opposite of gentleness? Well, it's harshness. And what does harshness do? It always divides. Just think of the people that have been harsh to you, maybe in the workplace, dare I say in the home at times. And you put your hackles up and your barriers go up and everything. It causes upset. It causes anger. Whereas gentleness disperses tension and brings healing. And it's essential in reflecting Jesus. And I find that the more time I spend with Jesus, the more gentleness grows. You know, if you've been through a time when maybe you haven't been quite on top of reading the scriptures or walking with God as maybe you'd like, or maybe you feel you should, and actually you find that other feelings begin to rise up. And gentleness is not one of those. But the more I find I'm spending time around the Word and with Jesus in prayer and things, then gentleness is the thing that increases, because it's part of the character of Christ. Let's clothe ourselves, and in that, let's ensure that we spend time with Jesus. What about the next one? Well, it's patience. Patience. We take a deep breath on patience. We probably all struggle at different times. See, what is patience? Well, it's what it's not. It's not reacting to provocation. It's not reacting to annoyance. It's not reacting to misfortune. It's not losing one's temper when someone does something we don't appreciate. The Western world lives in the fast lane. There's no room for slow progress. People need to learn fast, achieve quickly, and respond immediately. That's the sort of world that we live in. You know, I had people ringing me up in the afternoon to say, I sent you an email. I said, when did you send it? Well, we sent it at 11 o'clock this morning. And I've not replied, and it's midway through the afternoon. And because people want that immediate response. Patient means we demonstrate grace in challenging situations. And as we happily walk with others, we don't lose our rag when people disagree or don't understand. And patience means we happily walk with others who are going at a different pace to us. They can't keep up. Well, we walk at their pace. And we show some patience. It's a challenge, I think, within our world today, because our world is not a particularly patient world. But we need to demonstrate something different, which is the character of Jesus. But what about the next one? Well, the NIV has bear with each other. I've used here allowance for each other's faults. And I quite like, again, the phrase that the New Living Translation, and I think it deserves a mention. Then there's maybe a bit of a combination of patience and the next one we're going to come to, which is forgiveness as well. We were all fallen human beings, and none of us is perfect, unless one of you happens to be Mary Poppins in disguise, who's practically perfect in every way. But I'm not seeing that this morning. Let me know if I've got that wrong. And at times we need to give people a bit of space. But here, when we are bearing with each other, or we are giving allowance for someone else's faults, it's often not that they've done something horrendous, but they're just doing something in a different way to how we would do it. That ring a bell? And it happens quite a lot in church circles when somebody passes on a job to someone else and they feel as though you have to do it in this particular way. And actually there are different ways of doing it. and we bear with each other, or we have allowance for their faults, which is doing it in a different way. We need to give people a bit of space here, and space to mess up, i.e. to do it differently than we would choose to do it. Let's learn to apologise, put things right when that's necessary, but let's give people a bit of space to do things differently as well. Which then brings on to forgiveness. And I'm guessing you've heard many sermons on forgiveness. Forgive anyone who offends you. We've just had the Lord's Prayer as well, haven't we? About forgiveness. And forgive as I have forgiven you. Again, it's not what the world preaches. And when anything happens, the media's straight in, and what they're trying to find is somebody who's really angry, who's really upset, who's really holding something against somebody else. Because that seems to be the news story, and that's what they want to hear. But the person who says, I'm at peace and I've forgiven them, somehow that doesn't seem to get the airtime. The result of a lack of forgiveness is hardness of heart. There's a bitterness in the soul, and my friends, there's a miserable existence. I've talked to too many people that have missed years of their life as a result of a lack of forgiveness. And ultimately, we're the loser when we have that lack of forgiveness. It's a bit like drinking poison and hoping that the other person suffers. It doesn't work like that. And we become the loser within that. But remember here that the Lord forgave us, and we're to forgive as the Lord has forgiven us. And when we come to God, God says, forgive as I've forgiven you. And you need to pass that on. And forgiveness takes down barriers, and it brings people together. And a lack of forgiveness, again, will always divide. It's not always easy when someone has done something that has betrayed us and has hurt us. But let's go to the Father, who knows what it's like to be betrayed. And let's find that forgiveness from God. And we can pass that on as well. Make sure you don't hold on to things. And then the last one is love. Over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Again, I'm sure you've heard lots of sermons on love. God is love. That's the very definition of God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. We had the reading from Deuteronomy there. Putting love at the heart of our relationship with God, but also our relationship with one another. And it binds us together in perfect harmony. That's quite a wardrobe that we've got there. It goes on in verse 15 to say, let the peace of God rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. My friends, when we're wearing God's clothing, we will find peace reigns within our hearts. I wonder what is in your wardrobe this morning. Have you gone to God's wardrobe and put on his clothing? Or has somehow something else snuck in? And sometimes we feel comfortable in some other old clothing. But is that honouring to God? My friends, let's just check out our wardrobes this morning and to see what we're doing. This is the fruit of God's Spirit at work within us. 130 years. It's fantastic testimony, and it's been passed on from generation to generation. If we want to continue to pass on God's good news to the next generation, then we need to be wearing his clothing. Because, my friends, it's Jesus that people are attracted to, not us. And so it's his clothes that we need to be wearing. I pray God will continue to bless you for another 130 years or more. We won't be here. None of us will be here in that time. But may this baptistry be opened more and more as people come to faith in Jesus. And one of my prayers is that you will have a reputation as a place where people can find Christ and where they can grow in their faith, where Jesus is reflected. Let's pray together. Let's be still for a moment. I believe God speaks to us, and as we've been looking at the scriptures together, what have you heard God say to you this morning? Have you been challenged about your wardrobe, about some of the clothes that you're wearing? Just go through your wardrobe, see what's in there, and maybe take out some old stuff that has somehow found its way in there, or is lurking at the bottom. Ask Jesus to clothe you with his clothes. Lord, this morning as we've come to offer our worship and our praise to you. Forgive us, Lord, for the times when we've hurt others and we've let you down. Sometimes the things that we've said, the things that we've done or we've failed to do, that we've not reflected you, and we've had some old clothes on that gives a different picture. And this morning, Lord, we want to say we're sorry. Fill us in you, Lord, with your Holy Spirit. And we pray, Lord, that you would clothe us. And I want to pray here that the fellowship here would have a reputation as a place where people can find Jesus. And I pray too that some will say, in fact many will say, please can we walk with you? Because not only have we heard that Jesus is in you, but we've seen God at work within your life. Lord, I pray your blessing upon the fellowship here at Malvern this day. In celebrating the anniversary, we give you thanks for what you've done in those years. And I pray, Lord, your work will continue to flourish into the future. In Christ's name. Amen. Thank you.